Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, we provide workshops and exercises to learn about AWS services. These workshops and exercises are uploaded to our website aws-dozo.com. Today, we are going to talk about using Amazon Session Manager, and we will use Amazon Session Manager to connect to an EC2 instance over RDP in a secure fashion. In my personal opinion, Session Manager is quite an underrated service in Amazon. I have not heard many people using it, but I find this service very interesting, and it really helps you enhance your security profile big way. So let's see. To hope when I talk about Session Manager today, you realize how this service can help enhance your security and provide a method to connect to your EC2 instances more securely. So some introduction about Session Manager. So Session Manager is again a capability within AWS service, AWS Systems Manager, and Session Manager is used to connect and manage your remote servers, whether it is an EC2 instance or some kind of on-premises instance or a virtual machine, yeah, you can connect to these machines and you can manage it. And when you're connecting to these machines, either you can use AWS command line interface, CLI, or you can also use browser-based shell window, shell console to connect to your EC2 instance or virtual machine. And when you're using a browser-based shell window, you can actually remotely run shell script or PowerShell commands to perform activities or action on your EC2 instance or virtual machine. So let's talk about a couple of features and benefits of Session Manager, which makes it very powerful. The first one is that when you're trying to connect to, again, I'll try to talk more in context of EC2 here onwards. So when you're trying to connect to your EC2 instance using Session Manager, you don't need to enable any inbound security rule, open any inbound security port. You don't need to manage any bastion host, or you don't need to configure any SSH key or key pair on the machine in order to access it. None of these things are required in order to connect to your EC2 instance using Session Manager. And this is one property or one benefit of Session Manager, which really enhances your security profile a big way. Second, in order to connect to your EC2 instance, it's simple one-click access. Whether you're running a CLI command or you're trying to open a console-based, browser-based console access to your EC2 instance, it just click of a button and you can get connected to your EC2 instance. The third one is port forwarding, which is very much again related to the point number one we discussed earlier. So suppose and this is the one we are going to take as an example in today's exercise. Suppose you want to access your EC2 instance over RDP port, or you want to access your EC2 instance over, say, HTTP port 80. In that case, you don't need to configure any security group with inbound rules to connect to the EC2 instance. You can use Session Manager port forwarding method to connect to the EC2 instance over RDP or port 80. And again, since you are not defining any kind of security group or inbound rule, you enhance your security while connecting to your EC2 instance on the required port and protocol. Again, I'll come back to port forwarding later. So moving on to other features, and that is Session Manager supports both Windows and Linux operating systems. And when you are connected to the EC2 instance over Session Manager, it does complete logging and auditing of your session activities, so that anyone interested can see what actions and activity the user has performed on the EC2 instance using AWS Session Manager. So having done that, let's talk about how port forwarding can be used to enable a secure RDP access to EC2 instance. Again, we are going to take example of RDP here, but this can be applied to any other port or protocol. So let's see how typical RDP access look like. So if you're trying to access to EC2 instance over RDP, what you need to do is that you need to enable security group on that EC2 instance with some inbound rule which giving access to RDP. Either you're going to everyone or you're giving access to a particular set of IPs. Then you generate a key pair to create a login name and password, initial login name and password. And then you use, from the client machine, you use some kind of RDP client to connect to the EC2 instance over RDP port. Yeah, that's how a typical RDP access work. Now, if you try to see and try to enable the same kind of RDP access using AWS Session Manager, let's see how it looks like. So when you're using RDP over Session Manager, first thing you realize that you don't need to do any of these two things. Like you don't need to create any security group with inbound. Okay, let me go back. You don't need to create any security group and inbound access rule for the RDP. That's the first thing. Second, you don't need to generate any key pair for login and password. So these two things you don't need to do. And then still you can connect to your EC2 instance over RDP port. So how it works? So that's where the port forwarding comes to the play. And the way port forwarding works is that your client can access your EC2 instance with the help of SSM agent through an SSM session manager tunnel. And this is a secure tunnel which AWS provides between your client and your EC2 instance to create a session manager session. Now, what you can do, you can use the port forwarding method to use this tunnel, to use this session to enable access on RDP or HTTP port. So the way it works is that your client will actually try to do an RDP access to, say, localhost 9999, just as an example. Then you will use SSM CLI command to do port forwarding, which will simply forward this localhost 9999 to EC2 instance at 3389, which is the RDP port. And then local SSM will then simply use this port forwarding to provide access to this EC2 instance over RDP port 3389. So SSM Manager will use this port forwarding to do a local host 3389, but since we are doing a port forwarding, your client will get an RDP access to your EC2 instance over port 3389. So in very simple terms, guys, your client is accessing RDP over localhost 9999. Then SSM is using port forwarding method to forward localhost 9999 to EC2 at 3389. And then Systems Manager agent installed on EC2 instance will use this port forwarding to forward the request to RDP 3389. And you can see that this is also localhost, this is also localhost, but client gets access to this EC2 instance through this port forwarding on RDP. Yeah, that's what happens behind the scene, but it might look very complex to you, but to be honest, just one or two lines of the command and you can make it working. The whole heavy lifting is done by Session Manager behind the scene. So time for some action. So what we have done is that we have created one exercise, and this exercise is published to our website, aws-loser.com. And you can follow this exercise to complete the scenario where you configure AWS Session Manager to connect to an EC2 instance over port 80. I'm going to show you the steps involved in completing this exercise and also describe certain things over here which will help you understand how this whole concept works. But again, the URL of this workshop exercise has been provided in the description box below, and you can access this URL anytime to complete this exercise at your own pace. But okay, so let's go and see what it takes to complete the exercise. So this exercise has been published to our website aws-dojo.com. Yeah, you can see this exercise over here. There are certain steps involved in order to complete this exercise. Let's follow these steps one by one, and you will be able to implement this scenario to get access to EC2 instance over RDP port using Session Manager. So first thing first, you need to have an AWS account. And if you don't have an AWS account, please use this link over here to create a free trial account. Then from the machine where you are trying to run this exercise needs to have certain things installed and configured. And again, guys, this is one-time activity. You don't need to do one again and again. If you do it once, then after that it's a seamless for you to use this exercise without repeating any of these things. So since we are trying to connect to a Windows machine over RDP port, the machine which we are thinking to use where this exercise is run will have some kind of Windows operating system, say Windows 10 or something like that. Then you need to have AWS CLI download and install, and here's a link for that. You need to have a Session Manager plugin downloaded and install. Again, here is the link for that. And you need to have some kind of remote desktop connection application so that this machine can use this application to connect to the EC2 instance over port 80. So next is we are going to create an IAM user account in AWS. Since we are using CLI needs an AWS profile on the local machine on where you're running the exercise to run the commands for the authorization of the commands. So we are going to create an IAM user which will use to create AWS profile on this machine where we are running this AWS CLI command. So to do so, we log into AWS console and then we go to the IAM management console. We say we want to add a new user. This user, we give a name called, say, Dojo user. We want to give only programmatic access to this user because I don't need to use it to access console. I just need it for AWS profile creation. Then this user we give administrative access in this case, and then we simply create the user. When you create the user, it generates access key and access key ID and secret key, please make note of these two credentials because we need it when we are trying to create AWS profile on the machine where you run the exercise. So once your user account has been created, again, it's a one-time activity. You don't need to do again and again. You create an IAM role. An IAM role, again, is a one-time activity. And since EC2 instance has a Systems Manager, which we are going to talk to, in order to talk to Systems Manager, we need to have EC2 instance assign certain role with a permission. So that EC2 instance is visible inside Systems Manager as a managed instance. Okay, so what you do is that we create a role for the EC2 instance. So we go to the IAM Manager management console. We say we want to create a role, and this role is for EC2 instance, and then we need to provide this policy or permission to this role. So once an EC2 instance has a role with this permission, then System Manager treats that EC2 instance as a managed instance, and then such instances can be used with System Manager's features, like in this case we are using with the Session Manager. So we attach this policy, and after that, we simply go and create the role, and this role we give a name Dojo EC2 role. Again, this activity is also one-time activity. You can create a role once and can use with as many EC2 instances you launch here onwards. Then let's launch an EC2 instance. EC2 instance, since we are trying to show you how you can use Session Manager to provide RDP access to EC2 instance. Let's launch an EC2 instance which will use as a instance to access over RDP. So you go to EC2 Management Console, click on the instances, and then say I want to launch a new instance. In this case, we are trying to do RDP access, so we will choose a Windows server. As an example, I have chosen here Windows Server 2016. Then I select some decent sized machine. I mean, you can go for a smaller machine if you want, but I selected here T2X large. I choose this machine to be in the default VPC. Then I enabled public IP. And most important here is that I have enabled IAM role to Dojo EC2 role, because once I assign this role, then this EC2 instance will be treated as a managed instance inside Systems Manager. Then we move next, and here is another very important and interesting configuration. So in this case, we are creating a security group for the EC2 instance, but see what? We don't have any inbound rule, because we don't need any inbound rule in order to access this EC2 instance. So we are providing no inbound rule, and still will be able to access this machine over RDP. And after that, we simply say I want to launch the instance. And when we're trying to launch the instance, we say, hey, do you want to generate a key pair, which is used to generate the first login name and password. But in this case, I'm saying, hey, proceed without a key pair. Again, another example of enhancing your security profile where you are not generating any key pair, so you don't need to manage the security of your public key and private key. You are simply launching an EC2 instance without a key pair, and still you'll be able to connect to this EC2 instance remotely over Session Manager, either through Bash console or through RDP Access. So we launch this instance, and we wait till the status of the instance changes to 2 by 2. And at this point of time, we make note of the instance ID, because this is the instance ID we are going to use in the Session Manager. So first we will go and connect to EC2 instance using Session Manager with the console window, and we will try to create a local user in the EC2 instance, which we can use to authenticate for the RDP access. So to do so, we go to Systems Manager console, we go to Session Manager, and we say we want to start a session. And when I say, okay, which instance you want to start the session with, and you can see that your instance is listed over here, and you simply select that instance over here and say, hey, I want to start session with this instance. And you guess what? You get a browser-based PowerShell session created with your EC2 instance. And at this point of time, guys, you are already connected to your EC2 instance using your shell window, using a browser-based shell window, and you can run any PowerShell command at this point of time to remotely manage your server. So what we are going to do here is that we are going to create a local user account on the EC2 instance. So we run this command called get local user to see what different users are there on the EC2 instance. Then we generate a password string, secure password string. Then we run this command called a new local user with the demo user as the username and this password string variable as the password. So this will create a username account demo user with this one as the password. Then we run this get local user command again to see if my user has been successfully created, which you can see your demo user has been successfully created, and it is enabled, it is ready. And finally, we add this user to the local administrator group so that this user has permission for RDP access. So very simple, guys. What we have done is that without going to the machine through the Session Manager, you can see that you can run the PowerShell command to be able to connect to your EC2 instance and run this PowerShell commands remotely to perform the job, where in this case we simply added a local user on the EC2 instance. Now, time for the big thing, which is running the RDP, having the access over RDP. So in order to do so on your local machine where you're running your running this exercise, open Windows PowerShell for AWS, and you will have this console available to you because you have deployed AWS CLI. And once you install AWS CLI, this console becomes available on your local machine. So you open this console window and then you run this command AWS configure, and this command is used to create AWS profile on your local machine, and then this profile is used by AWS CLI command to authorize the call to the AWS services. So it will ask for first access key, then secret key, then your reason name, and then your output format. This secret key, access key you have already made note of in the previous steps. You simply provide that to create your profile. Then comes the and to be honest, I mean, this is also one-time activity. You don't need to create profile again and again. You do it once, and your profile is already created. You can use it after that. Now you can run your CLI commands anytime, and CLI command will simply use the profile for the authorization. Now next you run the commands, your SSM command, and this command is AWS SSM start session. And we are saying that we want to connect to this instance ID, using port forwarding session. And we are saying my local port is 56789, just as an example, and my remote port is 3389. So all I'm saying here is that on the local, open a port 56789, and this port will be forwarded to this EC2 instance at port 3389. And here this instance ID is a placeholder. Here you want to put the instance ID you made note of here. So this instance ID you provide over here when you're running this command. So let's go back here again. So you run this command. So this is the command which is actually starting a session with port forwarding. So when you run that, it will say that, hey, I'm starting the session. This is the session ID, and I am I have opened this 56789 local port for this total user, and this port has been configured to forward the request to this EC2 instance at port 3389. Now we are all good. So all I do is I open my remote desktop connection application, and I say, okay, my computer is localhost 56789, and that's the one I used here. And then my user is demo user. And remember, this is the user you created on the EC2 instance in the previous steps. Then it will ask for the password. Password for a demo user was password1. And guess what? It will use the port forwarding to connect you to the EC2 instance. So you saw that how Session Manager actually, without even opening any inbound port at your or any inbound security group rule at your EC2 instance, was able to create an RDP session with your EC2 instance using Session Manager tunnel. Again, this was the example with RDP, but you can use it for HTTP port 80 and those kind of examples as well. And when you are say, okay, I'm done with my connection, you can simply disconnect the instance, and here you simply type in Control-C, and that will close your session as well. So the session which has started, the port forwarding session which is started over here, that will close. So that pretty much completes the exercise. The next step is to go and clean up the resources so that you don't incur any cost post the exercise. So that was all about this exercise guide. If you like this exercise, please click on the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. There are many other similar workshops and exercises provided in our website aws-dojo.com, which you can use to learn about AWS services. We always look forward to your feedback and comments and requests for new content. If you have any such feedback, you can either provide us in the comment section in the YouTube channel, or you can also reach out to us in this contact through this contact us tab. So that was all for today. I will look forward to publish you a similar exercise again in coming days. Meanwhile, enjoy these exercises and let me know what you think. Have a nice day. Bye bye.